Hi, I'm Stephen Feinberg, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Film and TV Office. Our guest tonight is a very distinguished gentleman. He ran the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts for 27 years and got so much done. I want to welcome Randy Rosenbaum to Double Feature, and we know you just retired. How's retirement?
Retirement's awesome. I highly recommend it for everybody.
Okay. Well, it was an honor for me to work with you for 18 years, which was probably your most challenging years. But tell us about your background, where you're from, and how you became the executive director of the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts.
My degree is in music education from Temple University in Philadelphia.
Yep.
I wanted to start off by being an opera singer.
Really?
And decided that there was probably no future for that for me. So I decided to get my degree in education. And then midway through that, I decided that I really didn't want to be in the classroom all that much. Mm-hmm. So I started to look at other things. And I attended a workshop that was given by jazz pianist Billy Taylor, who at that point was on the National Council on the Arts, which is the board of directors of the National Endowment for the Arts.
Yeah.
And it was all about arts administration. And I thought, gee, that sounds like an interesting thing to do. Mm-hmm. So I took a couple of business-related courses, whatever I could fit into.
And this was at Temple?
At Temple.
Yep.
Graduated with my music education degree. And the first summer out of that, I went up to Beverly, Massachusetts to be the assistant director of the North Shore Music Theater, which is a summer stock theater. Mm-hmm. On the North Shore of Boston. Great experience. Because I was a classically trained musician, I wanted to get more involved in classical music. And I decided it might be interesting to serve with symphony orchestras or find a job with a symphony orchestra.
Yeah.
So I went to the American Symphony Orchestra League, which is the national agency that supports symphony orchestras around the country. The founder of the American Symphony Orchestra League was a guy named Ralph Black. So I went to visit his office in Vienna, Virginia.
Okay. He
sat me down and said, okay, what have you been doing? I said, well, for the past several years, in addition to going to school, I've been managing my father's delicatessen. Oh. And he said, anyone who can manage a delicatessen can manage a symphony orchestra. So he took me in as an intern. He placed me at the Jacksonville Symphony in Florida as the assistant to the general manager, and I worked a little bit there. Yeah. And then I got my first set of jobs managing orchestras up and down the East Coast. A very small orchestra in Rome, Georgia.
Okay.
One of the oldest orchestras in the country. But what I learned from that experience was, as great as it was, always listen to the orchestra before you agree to manage it. You run into a situation where, in an orchestra in particular, you have competing personalities. You have the executive director's personality, and I'm pretty easy to get along with.
You're very easy.
And then you have the artistic director's personality.
Okay.
And usually in that dynamic, the artistic director carries a lot of weight because he or she is making the artistic decisions, and he is the one or she is the one who should be up front in
the face of
the organization.
Right.
If that dynamic between the artistic director and the executive director is not great,
yeah,
you should do everything you can to make it as great as you can, and if you can't, you should move on. I decided at that point, after a couple of years in that situation, that I really wanted to get into something where either I was my own artistic director or I was working in something entirely different.
Okay.
Now, I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And I had heard that there was an opening at the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, which was the state arts agency that, using government funds, supported the arts in Pennsylvania. And so I applied for the job. I had an interview with the executive director of the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. It was actually over lunch in a historic old hotel in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. So I drove from Cleveland to Pittsburgh, sat down with this lovely person to have the interview, and I guess I impressed her. And she hired me. She hired me as the director of the dance and presenting organizations programs.
Okay.
I did not have a lot of background in dance, and it was a little intimidating because the person who hired me, a woman named June Batten Airy, was the first dance program director at the National Endowment for the Arts.
Wow.
And she knew everything there was to know about dance, and she was hiring me as the dance program director in Pennsylvania. So that was a little off-putting. But it was great because she could help me through things. And when a couple of years into my role, I organized a major dance conference in Philadelphia. June got on the phone and got Agnes DeMille to do the keynote address.
Wow.
Keynote address where she spent most of her time complaining about Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
And also Martha Graham.
Wow.
So these are titans
Sure.
in the dance field. And she just picked up the phone, called them, and got them involved in
So
the
she was a
project.
real mentor for you.
She was an amazing mentor for me. I was the director of both the dance program and the presenting organizations program. And presenting was all about going into these little towns and communities around Pennsylvania where there was a nonprofit organization that would present touring professional artists. So if Itzhak Perlman, for example, was touring through Pennsylvania, he would go to different college towns or to Philadelphia or to Pittsburgh or to State College and be presented by an arts organization in that community. And those arts organizations would apply to the State Arts Council for grants to support those presentations.
Okay.
So I would spend my time driving around the state of Pennsylvania and visiting all of these small little communities to work with these nonprofit organizations on how to make their applications stronger,
Yeah.
and B, the ins and outs of making their programming.
So maximizing their potential.
Exactly. So that was an exciting
Yeah.
job to do as well. I continued to do that during the 10 years I was in Pennsylvania. But at a certain point, I became what I would call the relief pitcher for the agency. If somebody left and their program area was left vacant, I would run it until we hired somebody new.
Wow.
So if the music program director left, I would run the music program, and in addition to all the other stuff I was doing, until we hired a music program director.
Wow. That's a lot.
Or if, local arts or museums. So I basically ran every program at the agency at one point during that 10-year period.
So you knew it inside and out.
Right. And at some point during that process, I became the de facto deputy director of the agency.
Okay.
So I was doing all that other programmatic stuff, but also handling administrative stuff as well.
Yeah.
And that, for a state arts agency, is everything from personnel-related things to budget making,
Grants.
to budget monitoring, to overseeing the grants management program, working with the staff to make sure that we were all messaging the way we should be
The
messaging.
communication to the community, to other agencies, to the government.
So when you stop and think of it, it was the best way for me to learn everything I needed to know in order to run another state arts agency.
Did you think of staying at that one, or did you say, at some point, I need to look for a new gig?
I did, and there was, when the executive director left, I became the acting executive director for a year.
Okay.
And you know what that experience is
Yes,
like.
I do.
So there was a lot more that was put on my plate in addition to all the other stuff that I was doing at the agency.
Right.
But at some point, I wanted to get out and do something different Pennsylvania's a big state.
Yeah.
It takes about 8 hours to drive from one end to the other. And I was, doing road trips all around the state.
It's quite a lot of driving.
Quite a lot of driving. There were times when 4 or 5 of us on the staff would jump in a van and just do a road trip for a week and a half, 2 weeks. I had a growing family and wanted to spend a lot of time with them.
Right.
And I started to look at other opportunities. At that point, just after I reached the 10-year part in Pennsylvania, point in Pennsylvania, the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts position opened up.
What year was this?
This was 95.
Okay, 1995.
So in 95, I came up and I had an interview with 3 members of the board of the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts. The job appealed to me because it's Rhode Island. You can visit 3 or 4 organizations in the space of a day and still be home for dinner.
48 miles long, 40 miles wide, I think 400 or 500.
50 miles north to south, 30 miles east to west, 400 miles of shoreline.
400 miles.
There you go.
Okay.
So
39 cities and towns.
and a great arts community.
Right.
I mean, you've got the internationally known Rhode Island School of Design. You've got world-class theater at Trinity Rep, the GAM Theater, amazing Rhode Island Philharmonic, which is basically a world-class orchestra. Here
Had
in
you
our
been to Rhode Island before?
First time I'd ever been to Rhode Island.
So I was on this little
Was-
interview.
Exactly.
Wow.
Even though one of the people who was interviewing me was a musician, and so he started to talk to me about musical stuff, and we got off the track, and we had to be brought back into the focus of an interview. I guess I did okay because they offered me the job.
Wonderful.
So I came up. I started the same week that Lincoln Almond started as governor of Rhode Island.
And how many governors have you worked for?
So I've worked with 5: Almond, Carcieri, Chafee, Raimondo, and McKee.
Yep. It's amazing.
It's been a great experience. And
27 years, right? You end up 27
Yeah.
years. And are you the longest serving executive director of the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts?
as far as I know, yes.
That's terrific.
So, and when I came here, there were adjustments, but it was everything I hoped it would be. A great, welcoming community, a community that felt like a community. I mean, in Pennsylvania, if I did some major project in Philadelphia, Philadelphia would be the only place it would be felt.
Oh.
You wouldn't have the kind of statewide impact that you have doing certain things here in Rhode Island.
Right.
And so it was exciting for me to be able to, organize a public meeting and have people from every part of the state come. That was amazing.
I tell people, of filmmakers I describe Rhode Island, I think of it like Deadwood. Everybody knows everybody. It doesn't take much to get people together for either something positive or
Yeah.
something negative.
There are just no shootouts on the
Right,
street.
there's no shot. But if you step on someone's toe, the rest of the city's going to know
Right,
about it.
exactly. And there are challenges related to that.
Do you see when you get here that everything is in place the way you like it? Or are there things that you say, this is a great start, or I'm going to start from scratch? How did you perceive the Rhode Island State Council on the Arts when you came here?
Well, there were 2 things. One, I had a great predecessor. Iona Dobbins was renowned for her care and attention for artists in particular, and also for the arts organizations and institutions. So my role was to build on that and make sure that that was clearly the goal of our agency, is to support the arts and artists in our state. So Iona set a great foundation for that.
When was the council established?
The council was established in 1967.
Okay.
And the story there was that the late great Senator Claiborne Pell actually wrote the enabling legislation for the foundation of the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities, the 2 federal cultural agencies.
Correct.
In that language, Senator Pell wisely said 2 things. One, all of the grants that we award at the federal level will be matching dollar grants, which means that for every dollar we give you, you have to raise at least $1 on your part. That means that the federal government isn't subsidizing the arts in the state. They are helping to support it along with everyone else. The other thing that Senator Pell put in the language was, at that point, 20% of the, I think it's 20%, 20 or 30. Boy, you retire and you forget these things. Of every dollar that is awarded to the National Endowment for the Arts shall go directly to the states to be matched at the state level and distributed by them. That figure is now 40%.
Wow. Okay.
But the states, for the most part, aside from Utah, which founded an arts council in 1898, the states, for the most part, created their state arts agencies in order to receive that federal money and distribute it locally throughout their state.
Okay.
So we came into existence approximately a year after the National Endowment for the Arts came into existence.
Yep.
So as far as the State Arts Council is concerned, we had the great foundation that Iona put into place. But we also had one challenging thing that fell on my shoulders,
Which was?
which was the public art piece that was being installed at the Rhode Island airport. This was a piece that the newspapers dubbed the Cloud Machine
The Cloud Machine.
and was incredibly controversial. It's an extraordinary piece, by the way.
Yep.
It's a piece conceived by an artist who actually was later commissioned to do the 9/11 memorial in Manhattan.
Wow.
The fountains
Yes.
that flow down, that's his piece.
Wow.
The piece in Rhode Island, the Cloud Machine piece, was basically a conceptual piece going from the earth to the sky.
Okay.
So it was, as you go in the airport at the lower level, it was a garden-like installation,
Yeah.
all greenery. It went into the airport and then shot up 2 stories as a fountain.
Wow.
And there would be mist at the top, and the mist would be reminiscent of clouds. So it was
Why is that controversial?
very conceptual piece. Well, it was happening at a time where there were budget difficulties.
Okay.
The way the public art program works here in Rhode Island, 1% of the construction costs of a state facility being built is set aside for the acquisition of art.
Okay.
And so 1% was being taken from the millions that were being spent to construct the new airport for the acquisition of art, which some people felt at that time, and wrongly so, I might add,
I'll agree with you 100%.
was a foolish waste of money. So they found a way to criticize this work. They battered it like crazy. The Providence Journal, I believe, gave it the name The Cloud Machine.
Okay.
And there was even rumors floated that the mist that was being developed by the fountain caused Legionnaire's disease. So my first day on the job, I had an interview with the You Paid For It crew from, I think, what was that, ABC 6.
Okay.
My job was
Your first day, you
my
walked right into
first
a
day,
controversy.
I worked right into a controversy, and the board, before I arrived, said that my first job was to cancel the contract with the artist, which, if I knew then what I know now,
Right.
I would have found another way to deal with that issue.
Right.
But my assignment from the board was cancel the contract with the artist. Artists throughout the state were furious with this action. It made the Arts Council look like it was not supportive of artists.
Feckless.
And it took literally years to rebuild trust in the agency.
Wow.
But that was, I had a great foundation, the challenges that this public art project presented, and my job was to make it all happen.
Right. Wow.
So it was a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh. Are there things that you are most proud of in your 27 years, your tenure at RISCA?
There are a lot of things that happened that I think were really positive. When we're looking at organizations, for example, we made a move away from giving just small project-oriented grants to organizations and moved more toward providing them with general operating support. So they didn't have to come up with a fancy project every year that may or may not get funded. Instead, we recognized that these arts organizations were doing valuable things throughout the year.
For the community.
For the community. So you've got an organization that isn't just doing, Shakespeare, but it's also doing theatrical programming in the schools and providing services to seniors and open caption programs for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Just provide, so those kinds of things need to be recognized. We're not just supporting an organization for this one single project that they're doing. We're supporting them for all the stuff that they're doing throughout the year. And it allowed us to take a broader view of all of the stuff that an organization was doing and evaluate them based on a full year of activity.
That's great.
So the move from projects to more of a general operating support thing was very valuable.
Yeah.
For individuals, the ability to provide them with financial support for the work that they do.
And these have to be Rhode Island residents.
These have to be Rhode Island residents. So if you're a ceramic artist, you can apply for a project that you do in the community. So if you're working with school kids or something like that, you're bringing them into your studio, helping them to throw pots and things along those lines. That's a project grant, but we also provided fellowship support for that recognize the quality of work and the value of having great artists living and working in our state. So those were, and we tried to expand as much as we could the support for individual artists, because individual artists are the foundation of any arts any arts community.
Right.
You've got the Great Trinity Rep, and you've got the Chorus of Westerly, and you've got the Newport Art Museum, but without individual artists, these organizations would not be able to function.
Right.
So I was very proud of the way we expanded support for individual artists. Very proud of the support that we provided for capital improvements to arts in organizations. So you mentioned
Is that the cultural grants?
These are the cultural facilities grants.
Love this.
This was a bond initiative back in 2016 that set aside $30 million.
And the voters voted on it.
Overwhelmingly supported.
Yep.
Voters approved $30 million, which would go toward the capital improvement of arts facilities. Now, keep in mind, we're an old state, relatively speaking, in the American culture. We've got a lot of arts organizations that are working in buildings and structures that were built a while ago.
Right.
And the older a building is, the more difficult it is to keep it functioning at a level where you can produce and present art in it.
Right.
So for an arts organization, particularly an arts organization that's struggling for money, the less you have to spend keeping your building together, the more you can devote to doing arts programming and education programming and the like.
Right.
This $30 million allowed these organizations to apply for grants to fix things in their buildings. Tell the Odeum story.
The Odeum, so that did not have ADA bathrooms, so that needed to be fixed. There was no elevator that needed to go towards the balcony if you needed to. Sprinkler systems, just egress issues.
All the non-sexy stuff that are hard to raise money for.
Right, and to me, it changed the whole facility so that it was more accessible for an audience. And then as we kept building and building and building upon, now we're able to have a liquor license as an example. We can show movies, because when you didn't have a sprinkler system, you couldn't make the place dark and show movies. And now we can show classic movies. I've seen that facility and others, so many others.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the greatest things you did, your leadership, because it created partnership between the private sector, the public sector, and then those places tend to be anchors within the community. So if someone's going to the Odeum, they are most likely, if they're going to go see a show, whether it's the Bacon Brothers or Christopher Cross coming into town, they'll usually use the restaurant, grab a bite, go to the bar, after or before, have a coffee. and it is an anchor, and it changes the whole outlook on the community.
I drove up up Main Street in East Greenwich the other day. There are so many really exciting restaurants on that street that weren't there
No.
when the Odeum was less functional.
Right,
let's
and
put it that
now we're
way.
talking about all the innards have been taken care of. So now we're talking about making sure that we make the the view outside more pleasant, and try to keep things in a historical vein, making sure that we keep with the history, but adding neon, making it more, what do they call that? Not sidewalk friendly, but what do they call that when it's got a little more eye candy?
Sure, the facade work.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. So
it's
we're
great.
just but that, and those are the final touches.
Right, exactly.
And it couldn't have
But you
done
need to
without-
build from the inside out.
Couldn't have done without
Yeah.
the facilities grant.
And then, the Stadium Theater in Woonsocket,
Yes.
an incredible success story based on all the work that those folks have
In
been
Bristol,
doing.
there's stuff.
Bristol Art Museum. You've got the roof work that was done by the Chorus of Westerly.
Right.
You've got the amazing work that's happening at Teatro Ecos,
Yes.
the Spanish language theater here in Providence, which has now acquired a new building and is doing some really extraordinary stuff.
When you're able to do that, it becomes an avalanche of good things.
Exactly.
And
when the bond issue came for a second time just a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
it passed overwhelmingly. Positive votes in every single one of the 39 cities in town.
because they all feel it. They personally feel it.
Exactly. I must say that I absolutely applaud the council for hiring Lynn McCormick as the new executive director of the agency. She is an extraordinary arts administrator. She has a wealth of contacts and abilities and knowledge, and will take the agency into the future with great.
I think that it's been a seamless sharing of the baton from you to. I stepped in for a short period of time while the search was being done.
Brilliantly, I might add.
Yeah, right. I did my best. But I think Lynn is also following in your footsteps, and then is also going to bring us in further adventures in a positive way for the Council on the Arts.
Lynn doesn't need to follow my footsteps. I set the stage. She's writing her own play.
Well, she's got her own, yeah. But what do you think is the state of the council, the state of the arts in Rhode Island right now? How would you describe the state of the arts at this point in time?
I think we were rocked by COVID. National studies have shown that there was a real downturn in income that artists could receive during that period, and the amount of work that was happening. I mean, it really rocked us. We were able to, thanks to what I refer to as the best congressional delegation in the universe, get a lot of arts-specific funding to come to the state to help those arts organizations and individual artists. There was a great artist relief fund that was organized and developed by Molly Flanagan at the Arts Council, and has helped provide some funds to artists to live during that period of time.
Yep.
So there's a lot that we were able to do to help, but we're still recovering from it.
Right.
And people are still hesitant to get back into theater and concert halls. And our next major goal is to convince them that it is safe.
Normalcy.
Exactly.
We want
Exactly.
normalcy. Well, Randy, let me ask you this. Now that you've started retirement, you're 7 months into retirement, maybe 8 months. What do you want to do with your time? Do you have any particular hobbies or things that you're looking forward to doing?
I've been really busy. It's been really remarkable. I have, so far in the past 7 months, I have served on 3 grant review panels. So I'm reading grant applications from other states and meeting online with the panel members and discussing those applications. That takes a lot of time. I've just been put on the board of the Festival Ballet Providence.
Wonderful.
So I'm excited about that opportunity. It's a wonderful organization. And I've just been added to the board of the Anthony Quinn Foundation, which is a wonderful organization organized in the memory of Anthony Quinn, the great actor and artist, who which provides scholarships to high school students looking toward their
Career in the arts.
further education and career in the arts.
See, that's wonderful. Great by Kathy Quinn. And you also last night, the Rhode Island International Film Festival presented an award for your outstanding service as an arts advocate for the entire state of Rhode Island, the George M. Cohan Award. And it was nice to be able to present that to you. And you have your family, and they're happy to have you home. And
Yeah, it's been fine.
well, I want to thank you for your friendship, your mentorship, for hiring me 18 years ago. Your leadership and setting an example, not just for the things you do, but the example you set on a daily basis, the conversations we've had over time, your moral compass, which is important, your love of the arts, both personally and as professionally. And it's just been an honor to work with you and collaborate with you, and I am honored to have you as my friend. And I thank you for all you've done on behalf of the state of Rhode Island, all the citizens, and the generations, really generations of Rhode Island artists and folks that love art and the culture of Rhode Island. You have done heroic work and are so appreciated, and I want you to know that. And I know here at Rhode Island PBS, we appreciate all you've ever done.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we wish you the best of health and happiness always.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again on Double Feature.